Fellow Rotarians, welcome to meeting number 5, Pre-Pets number 5. Another fabulous session has been arranged for you. Our presenter, past President Katrina, is more than qualified to present on this topic, project design and implementation. It is so important that we do the right planning for our projects. So this evening is going to take you into a little of that so that we get the kinds of projects, the maximum impact. But I also want you to spend a little time in the Learning Center. I'm not seeing very many people signing up for the courses that have been recommended for you. So I urge you as presidents and secretaries incoming and incoming directors, it is important that you do these courses. It is also a requirement to be that office that you will hold. It is also a requirement that you come to these sessions to get the Rotary knowledge that has been designed for this, this cohort. Had we been having sessions in person, we would have been doing all of these things at a location. So I urge you to sign up, talk to your fellow members, your colleagues around the district, sign up and come to the sessions. They are packed with Rotary knowledge and just knowledge for everyday living. So enjoy this evening. I look forward to a great presentation and I look forward to seeing your questions and hearing your interaction during the session. Thank you so much. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you, DGE Sonia. PP Lisa.
Apologies.
Yes.
It's my privilege this afternoon to introduce our speaker, PP Katrina. Katrina is a member of the Rotary Club of Barbados South. She joined the club in 2003 and was among the first female inducted into the Rotary Club of Barbados. In 2009, Katrina became the first female president of the Rotary Club of Barbados. Over her Rotary life, Katrina has served in several club roles, including club secretary. At the district level, Katrina has served as assistant governor in the years 2012 to 2014 and district secretary 2015-2016. Katrina is passionate about youth programs and youth service in Rotary. Having been a past member of both the Interact and Rotaract clubs, she has been involved in coordinating RILA, selecting ambassadorial scholars, and selecting and preparing group study exchange candidates in the past. Katrina is an experienced human resources management professional with a demonstrated history of working in financial services industry. She's a strong professional, skilled in performance improvement, coaching, compensating, organizational design, and business transformation. Katrina is also a graduate of Cambridge University in Pennsylvania and holds a BSc in Human Resource Management and Business Administration. She also holds an MBA with a concentration in Global Management. Katrina is a certified compensation professional, and she completed project management training with the American Management Association. Rotarians and guests, please help me in welcoming PP Katrina.
Thank you, Rotarian Lisa, and thank you all for your warm welcome. Although we're not in the same room, I feel as if I can reach out and touch all of you. So pleasant good evening to everybody, and welcome to our session on project design and implementation. Rotarians are people of action, and most of us are drawn to Rotary for an opportunity to serve our society. And in delivering that service, clubs, big or small, all execute projects. Most of our projects are well executed, but others could be more impactful if we design and implemented projects in a more structured and professional way. So this evening, we're going to spend the next 60 minutes just sharing ideas and discussing project design and implementation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now to get us started on our design discussion. And just by a nod of somebody's head, just confirm you can see my screen in full presentation mode. Yes, excellent. All right, I'm going to turn my camera off to save some bandwidth there. Thank you. So to guide our discussion this evening, we're going to start off by looking at the basics of project management, Project Management 101, for lack of a better term. Now we're going to delve a little deeper to look at what is actually involved in project planning and execution. We'll also have the opportunity to hear about a legacy project done by one of our Rotary clubs in Guyana, helping us to immediately connect the information presented in this evening's session with what was done right in that project and execution. And finally, we're going to close out today's session by addressing some of your questions. But before we get started, I know it's 6 o'clock on a Thursday evening. Let's start with a little bit of activity and a little bit of quiz, a short quiz. I know we sent earlier ahead of the session a note with a QR code and an indication that we were going to be doing a short poll using the platform Slido. So if you haven't yet done so, I want you to go ahead and scan the QR code. You're going to need 2 devices. So you're going to need your phone or iPad using the QR code scanner to scan the QR code that you see on the screen, or if you have downloaded Slido, then you can input the 5-digit code that you see also appearing on the screen. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to get that done. Is there a question?
PP, Katrina, we're seeing your notes slide also.
Oh there. Okay. Let's see how I get it on my full screen. My apologies. Admittedly, I'm better with Teams than I am with Zoom. Is there anyone here who can assist?
Says stop sharing, do what you have to do, and then start sharing again.
All right, no problem. Let's go to the other screen anyway. Are you seeing the screen now? The word cloud is building. I'm hoping you're seeing that full screen.
Yes, perfect.
Are you? Okay. So we have 27 responses. Poor planning is the leading cause of why most large projects fail. Also poor communication and coordination, lack of commitment. Vision, weak financial management, all really, really good responses, but poor planning is holding its own. I think poor planning and lack of commitment, which is interesting, lack of commitment. It's not one that I would have naturally, I guess, thought of, but it is true. I guess sometimes we kind of are not fully committed to the project. Right, so poor communication, lack of commitment, poor planning, funding, and unclear objectives seem to be what most people are responding to. So I think we're going to touch on that a little bit more as we go through today's session. The other question I'd like you to answer in 2 words or less is, what is the first step you should undertake in a community service project? When we're at the start, what is the first thing we should do? Assessment, viability assessment, assess needs, poll the community, identify available resources, define objectives. In French, I could read that. Identify key stakeholders, but needs assessment is the lead-in one, and that's absolutely right. So I think I don't even have to spend the next 60 minutes telling you I think the session is over. No, just joking. But that's really very, very true. One of the things that we need to do is a proper community scan and a needs assessment before we decide on a project and before we get headlong into a project. So thank you very much for your participation. More of them are coming in, but needs assessment is definitely holding its own as the first step we should take in designing or undertaking a community project. Thank you all for your participation. Let's get to our presentation. So let me try this one more time. I'm going to try to share this again. See, you're still seeing my notes, are you?
We're not seeing, you haven't shared your screen. We're not seeing a shared screen.
Let's try this
So
You're seeing it now?
still seeing your notes. Come out of presenter view.
And how do we do that?
Maybe go
Anybody
back.
who's better than me?
Stop sharing again. Oh, somebody was telling you something just now. Swap display, 3rd icon in the top left of presenter screen. Albert was saying that. Top left of, yeah. And then go, so just go to from begin.
Top left, 3rd right. Top left. This is it.
So display settings.
I'm lost.
Let me find Albert or somebody. Let me unmute them so that they can talk you through it. Hold on.
Okay.
Albert, I'm looking for you to unmute.
How's that?
Yes,
Are you seeing the
perfect.
full screen now?
Yep,
Okay.
good.
All right. All right. Well, the crash course in Zoom. Thank you, Albert. Thank you all. So let's get started. So we did our quiz. Let's start by what is a project? When you hear a project, what do you think of? A project is defined in by the Institute of Project Management as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Another definition, if we go a little bit more generic using dictionary.com, is that a project is a large or major undertaking, especially one involving considerable money, personnel, equipment. But I think if we really examine, I guess what we call a layperson's view of a project, these definitions are both accurate to my mind. The first definition comes closest to what I think of when I think of a project and what I've learned from formal project management training. So put differently, projects consist of specific activities designed to achieve a particular objective, and a project has a start and a defined end, unlike regular operations. Regardless of how we define a project, I think we can all agree that at the center of any project is your project goal. What is it you're trying to achieve, and what needs are we trying to meet? In every Rotary Club, as we saw in our poll question, we need to start at this point. We need to understand what our communities need and or needs are, and what need is the club trying to fulfill. It's a very important first step for Rotary clubs, and in doing community scans, we should involve all which we should be involved with on an annual or biannual basis. We should look to what key stakeholders really need and really drill down into what we can deliver. So what is it they need, and zoning in to a need or goal that we're trying to reach. And once we're very clear on what our project is, what our goal is, then critically examine who the real stakeholders are and what their needs are. Regardless of the type of project that you're going to be undertaking, there are three key elements of project management, which include time. Once we know what we're trying to achieve and who it affects, then we need to focus on the timeline. When are we trying to achieve it by? We need to focus on the budget. How much will it cost? And certainly where will we raise the funds from? And we need to agree on the scope of the project. One of the things that we run ourselves in trouble with sometimes is having projects that are not scoped well or too large in scope. So what are the objectives that the project should achieve in order to be successful? What are the features and capabilities that the project deliverables should have? Now let's turn our attention to a project cycle, because we know that a project has a clear starting point and a defined ending point. Projects have life cycles, just like as humans, we are on a life cycle. On the screen right now is the project life cycle that is promoted by Rotary International. It displays 4 major phases. However, in my experience, those 4 phases actually should probably be expanded to 5 phases to really drill down on one of them a little bit more than that model suggested. I think we can improve the delivery of our projects if we split the phase into 2. And specifically, we start off by initiating the project, what I described earlier as identifying the needs or scanning and determine what we're trying to achieve. Then we have to move to planning. We have to move to the implementation of the project, monitoring and promoting, and that we're going to spend some emphasis on that a bit later. And then, of course, handing over the project, but also taking the time at the end to evaluate the project and to document what we've achieved. What are the lessons learned, and what is the impact of the project? in my daytime job, the last step, that of closing and evaluating, is a requirement for all of the projects financed and supported by my employer as a multilateral development bank. What was the impact of the project? What did we learn, and how could we have done it better? So we will know for the next time. And sometimes that's the step that we don't always get to in Rotary, and one of the steps that I think is very, very important for us to make sure we complete going forward. The importance of proper planning, project management cannot be overstated for big or small projects. If we have sound project management, it helps us to have a more predictable project planning and execution process. It helps us to establish and to adhere to things like the project budget, timelines, and the scope and guidelines. And it helps us to identify and plan for risk. Of course, if done correctly, even before you start a project, clubs would be able to identify and terminate projects that have no or very low relevant value. So the importance of project management and sound project management, I think, can't be overstated. So thus far, we've talked about the scoping of a project, but one of the other important project design fundamentals is time. One of the things I'm going to implore you this evening is, when you need to determine your project timeline at the start of the project, what is the delivery date? What are the milestones? We need to create and update a project management dashboard to monitor and report on the project using this dashboard, which can help us to give a project status at a glance. In Alphonse, same slide. And how we resource a project is very important. Getting subject matter experts and specialists, and in Rotary's case, volunteers, is key to our ability to deliver on the project objectives. I think critical to proper project execution is the appointment of an experienced project leader. So as they say, a ship is only as good as its captain. And as we build projects in Rotary, we need to have a good captain. So it's not always about, choosing the people who generate the idea to be the project manager. At the club level, in terms of a project hierarchy, typically you will have the president as the sponsor of the project, the overall sponsor, and he or she will sell the project and promote the project and put the full weight of the club presidency, of the office of the club president, behind the project. The board will also have to exercise oversight on the project, asking tough questions and providing support and helping to clear roadblocks when and if necessary. Finally, let me again say, just for some emphasis, the project manager selected has a direct correlation to the successful project implementation. The project manager is going to be responsible for the planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and the completion of the project. So pulling it all together, we all have great ideas or thought leadership initiatives, but they can only become successful if we plan well, gather the support from key stakeholders and experts, and implement and execute our plan, supported by effective communication, budgeting, and scheduling. So let's shift gears a little bit. As I said before, I know it's 6 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. As one of my colleagues said to me, Junior Friday, on the day before Friday. So let's make it a little bit more practical. Let's look at what is actually involved in a project plan, using an example that I think most of us can relate to. We're going to use a cooking analogy, and we're going to use the meal planning book as our project plan. So in this example, your role is going to be the head chef or project manager, but in this example, the head chef. And your role is going to be, as I said before, the planning, the executing, the monitoring, the controlling. You start by plotting a realistic course for the project. In this case, what is the meal plan? What are we serving? What is on the menu? Does the project align with the club's priorities? Are we preparing a meal that is in keeping with our desired style of cooking? Are we an Asian restaurant planning to make and serve pizza? That's not going to work. So is the project that you're selecting or that you are going to be promoting really aligned to the club's goals and priorities? And how does it meet the needs of your target audience? How does it meet the needs of your key stakeholders? How does it align with their expectations? And what needs should the project be meeting? We're all gathered at the table waiting for dinner. What is it, what are our interests? What is it we want? And we're still in the planning phase of the project cycle. At this point, we must develop our project scope statement. And I make a special note here because this is what we're most guilty of in clubs, in Rotary clubs, of not doing well. We need to articulate and document the project objectives, the project requirements, and the project deliverables and timelines. We need to identify the risk in all of the projects that we're going to be undertaking, and if possible, the 5 top risks need to be borne in mind and taken into account. How are we going to mitigate these risks if it is not possible to eliminate the risk? And as head chef, you're responsible for assembling a team, and a proper team is critical to the success of a project. In our example, we need to acquire the resources for a project. We're not cooking, and a regular Rotary project, it would be assembling experts and funding and looking for contributions, perhaps in-kind contributions. In our example, it's gathering the ingredients for the meal that we're preparing. So in our Rotary projects, we'll need to perhaps crowdsource for support and funding. And I want to hasten to add that Rotary's crowdsourcing tools could be used to find resources for our projects. So if you haven't yet looked at Rotary Showcase, I would encourage all incoming presidents and secretaries to look at Rotary Showcase as you try to crowdsource some support for your projects going forward. As project manager, or in the case of our example as head chef, you need to provide the team with clear and specific definition of tasks and timelines for every part of the project, and you need to be able to detail roles and responsibilities. So who's stirring, who's flipping, who's and I'm going to kind of I think out myself as not a very good cook here, but we'll keep with the analogy. As project manager, now that you've assembled a team and you've assigned tasks, the head chef must also keep the machinery well oiled and functioning in sync and on time, which means that in a project, checking on individuals for status updates, clearing roadblocks, negotiating disagreements, and keeping morale high. As with managing a budget, project managers really need to keep everything on schedule so that the team can meet the projected completion deadlines. So we need to start by setting realistic deadlines throughout the life cycle of the project and communicate them constantly to the team, to the club, and continue to provide status updates regularly. In fact, now that I mentioned communication, I want to just take a few seconds here to kind of reinforce something that I mentioned earlier. And I think communication plans are often overlooked in our projects in Rotary. We kind of just go along with it as you know, as it unfolds. But one of the steps that I'm going to implore you again to undertake at the beginning of the project, and you will obviously tweak it as you go along, will be to establish a communication plan. You will need to speak with and update your key stakeholders, and including club members often. We'll need to communicate with the broader community using various channels of communication, especially social media platforms these days. And some of you know how passionate I am about the use of social media in Communication Rotary's projects. You'll need to engage your stakeholders throughout the project, and that's really critical. So maintaining open lines of communication with key stakeholders and the project team really helps to empower the team and to help to clear roadblocks and to promote and get buy-in for the project, even as you are implementing. So one of the key steps that I'm going to suggest that everybody who's planning a large or medium-sized project is that you start with a communication plan, and you can get some assistance from strong communicators or experts in developing that communication plan. As the project is being implemented, one of the responsibilities of the project manager, and indeed I think the entire project team, is to monitor the project and to ensure project requirements and deliverables meet the expected standards. So tweaking and improving as we go along. And if we continue with our cooking example, of course, not many of us can honestly say that, you know, that we've cooked a meal without tasting at various stages of preparation, just to make sure that everything is going to plan and that it's tasting just right. So fellow Rotarians, what I'm basically saying to you is operating within the three constraints of any project, those of scope, time, and cost. When careful planning and skillful execution is brought together, the results are normally that we meet the stated goals of a project. Then we get to the stage that I think we all look forward to in projects, when we're doing the actual handover of the project, when the project is completed and we hand it over to the team who will be managing and maintaining and operating it going forward. And in the case of our example, of course, we're delivering the meal to eager diners. But as a project manager, our job is not quite done. At the end of every project in Rotary, we should ensure that the process has been documented. We should identify the lessons learned, and thereby, you know, helping others to avoid mistakes that we made in a particular project, or to take advantage of successes and methods that we employed on this project that could work on projects of the future. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to invite the representative from the Rotary Club of Guyana, I'm not sure which Rotary Club in Guyana, to briefly give an overview of their legacy project, and, you know, how, using some of the principles that we've discussed already for the evening, they have been able to be successful in delivering a legacy project. Luana?
Thank you, PP Katrina. Secretary Grace from the Rotary Club of Scarborough will now present a legacy project it started 14 years ago. Secretary Grace.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. All protocols previously established. I'll go straight into my presentation. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Okay. So the Rotary Club of Stabroek is currently implementing 3 legacy projects in the area of basic literacy. But for the purpose of this presentation, only one such project will be featured, the Buxton Youth Developers. The club was chartered on May 16, 2006 with 35 members. Over the past 14 years, we have embarked on several unique and ambitious projects aimed at advancing the development of disadvantaged persons in target communities across Guyana. But the club recognized the opportunity to positively impact the lives of young children in communities where the education system failed to recognize their inability to maintain the required standards of learning. This was the impetus that led the club to develop interventions to provide support in the areas of literacy, youth, and community development, patriarchy development approaches, and local and international partnerships. The project was designed and implemented using the project management processes: planning, resource acquisition, implementation, monitoring and promotion, and evaluation. The SET, or Sports Education and Culture Train concept, was adopted using a 3-pronged approach to promote positive change by providing a place of learning that's fun for the youth of the community. Fun through sport and competitive activities to create the interest. Fun through innovative education activities to ensure learning, and fun through cultural activities to promote understanding. The project champion, Rotarian Lenny Shuffler, who is known to all Guyanese, aptly describes the train concept as part of the program's strategic plan. He explained, using this system, we can all get on board, just like a train. The passengers may have different views, but they're all heading in the same direction. A key requirement for a student to participate in the sports and cultural aspect of the program is that they must attend and actively participate in the education component. The implementation of SET initially requires 2 main resources: a great facility with indoor and outdoor spaces to call the home of the project, and volunteer teachers from the community. Budgetary considerations included financing for teaching and learning supplies, stationery, school furniture, computers, internet, sports equipment, cultural and empowerment activities, and washroom and generally utilities, your power, electricity, and so on. And the schedule of classes, of course, is the focus of the program. But a little bit history about Buxton. Buxton is a village located on the east coast of Demerara, a village which at the time, this was pretty much around 2004, 2005, Buxton was synonymous with negative images, and it was a harbor for hardcore criminals. Residents of the community generally lived below the poverty line, and there was a high percentage of single and vulnerable mothers and unemployed males of all ages. Our club considered this an ideal community for launching our literacy program to help the children whose attendance at school was extremely low, or for the most part, non-existent. Our assessment during 2006, 2007 revealed that the community would need not only reading classes, but a strong program to attract, retain, and reward the attention and effort of young children who suffered massively for at least 5 years in this high crime environment of fear and also the situation provided all the leads for the implementation of the Sports Education and Culture Train initiative that would later contribute positively to the transformation of this community. This project gained district recognition and received the District 730 Award for outstanding contributions to community development. The club recognized very early that the project would not be successful without the involvement of community leaders. So in March 2007, the club partnered with Robin Phillips, an outstanding leader and resident of Buxton, to implement the literacy project. The program started with only 30 students who attended classes 3 afternoons each week at the old Buxton Market. The Stabroek intervention was led by Rotarian Lenny, who championed the project with a passion, in collaboration with Paulette Charles, who was also another influential community leader. The positive responses from the community, in addition to the increased size of the classes, necessitated relocating to a bigger facility to fully accommodate the program. Through a leasing agreement with the local government authorities, the Vigilance community, the community center ground was made available for the establishment of this facility. The club then acquired funding from the Cedar Canada Fund for Local Initiatives, UNICEF, Food for the Poor, and the New Zealand government to construct an 80 by 120 square foot concrete building, a fence, and sand filling of the community center ground. Private sector funding was also secured to construct a sanitary block and bleacher stands. The building was commissioned in 2011, but it was occupied previously because we were in a hurry to get the children out of the market. And the Rotary Club provided books and stationery, furniture, and computer classes were also added to the curriculum to provide an opportunity for students to build their IT capacities. Photos of the ground, sand filling. Throughout the years, the classes steadily increased in size, and currently almost 4,000 students would have passed through the program and benefited. Daily classes now have a roll call of up to 300 children in attendance regularly. Those are their computers. Sorry about that. And that's the ground where they play. Sports and cultural activities also expanded and contributed significantly to help the program to grow. They developed a football team and they won several regional competitions. I think that was under 15 and also under 19. And there's Uncle Lenny. The lawn and table tennis team members also trained with national coaches, excelling in local and international competitions. One table tennis player actually went on to represent Guyana at a tournament in China. Most notably, all the students who are members of the sports teams are all actively enrolled in their daily classes. A library was established for the school, and books and stationery were distributed to students. Annual spelling bee competitions highlighted the high achievers. Over 60 children each session would participate in 3 age categories for trophies and prizes. And because the club continuously looks for innovative and empowering ways to engage the students, to keep them coming, and to foster the fun while you learn concept, we came up with the Education Fun Day, which is an annual competition when we partner with our Rotaract and Interact clubs to host an exciting competition. Students try to quickly answer questions at different subject stations to earn points, and top scorers are presented with prizes. Christmas parties are an annual event where the children look forward to celebrating in a festive environment. Several commodities would have been distributed from time to time: care packages, foodstuff, fruit juices, clothing, footwear, for students and their families. Counseling and motivational talks were held with students and parents from time to time. The club also partnered with Optique Vision Care to conduct eye tests on 64 children, and spectacles were dispensed free of cost to at least 18 students who required them. I believe there were 4 students who had to see ophthalmologists. To ensure sustainability of the program, the BYD, Buxton Youth Developers, that is, governing board, was trained by club members on how to conduct their committee functions, secretary, president, treasurer, and so on, professionally, effectively, and with integrity. Critical management support and guidance continues until today. And we continue to maintain a working relationship with the community, undertaking continuous assessment so that we're always aware of emerging issues and challenges. Specifically, Project Champion Rotarian Lenny maintains daily, and this is literally daily contact with Robin, guidance on day-to-day activities that may unfold at the center and to determine when the club's intervention is needed. What is the impact of the project? We have almost 4,000 students, as I mentioned, who are now in a learning environment that may have otherwise been roaming the streets. Improved performance definitely at exams, especially secondary school entrance exams. Improved parenting skills. Parents are more interested in ensuring that their children attend school. Positive behavioral changes. And that is in a huge part because of Robin, very strict. Sports training and performance, very important for children. Career ambitions. And we know of quite a few children who've gone on to secure very good jobs. And most importantly, peer mentors. Children who have been in the program for a while return the favor and help the younger children coming up. So that for us is one really huge impact, the older children coming back. And so in a nutshell, we will continue to change lives through sport, education, and culture in support of the Buxton Youth Developers and build on the achievements that we've made over the last 14 years. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rotarian Grace. That was an excellent project, and I think a great example. I don't know if anybody wants to come off of mute to say what was most impactful in terms of connection it back to some of the project cycle steps that we talked about. Anybody wants to volunteer what struck them most? I'm going to say I was really impressed by the fact that you are keeping statistics in terms of the number of people who've gone through the program. You're keeping monitoring and close contact, and working with the center. I thought that was really very impactful. So I'm very happy that we've had the opportunity to see a great project in design and execution. Thank you again, Rotarian Grace. So I'm just going to, before we open for questions, just gonna wrap up by kind of reiterating we've said before in terms of the Rotary project management in that we need to go through their 5 stages. The first stage is plan. To do it right, I think there are 5 steps to a successful Rotary project. It is planning. It is acquiring the Rotary resources. The third step is implementing. The 4th step is monitoring and promoting. And of course, as was done by the Rotary Club in Guyana, the 5th step really is, evaluating in terms of closing and evaluating the project. So I think those are the 5 steps to a successful Rotary project. I am going to invite your questions now, and I know that there were some already placed in the chat. So I think I will start with those questions, and then anybody who has a question that they would like to unmute and join live, we can certainly accommodate those as well. So one of the first projects that I saw, one of the first questions, sorry, that I saw in the chat is a question that we get all the time. How do you fit in the fact that Rotarians are volunteers, and how does this affect all aspects of the project? So I'm going to quote, I don't think he's on the call, but one of my mentor Rotarians, PP Joe Steinbach, says all the time, you're a volunteer until you volunteer. And after that, you're no longer a volunteer. And I think I emphasized earlier that we need to really select the right resources to put on a project. So team members have to be carefully selected to kind of put into your projects, and those team members have to be committed to the goals of the project and to understand and to buy into the project requirements and the project timelines. So we are volunteers. We do have lives outside of Rotary, but once we volunteer, we're not that much of a, we are committed to a project. So the volunteer status is removed, and that would be how I would answer that question. And in terms of the second question, it says, what non-proprietary or low-cost tools or software would you suggest clubs use for managing their projects? Of course, the most popular would be MS Project, but that does have a cost. But I would say that you can actually manage a project quite effectively in Excel, and everybody has Excel on their computers. And you can literally do a Gantt chart in Excel and monitor your project, and your deliverables in Excel. If you want to get really fancy, and I know everybody has moved to Agile at my workplace, we have thrown project management almost out the window, and we are now pursuing the Agile methodology. And most of us have Kanban boards where we keep track of projects that are not started, or tasks not started, tasks in progress, tasks stuck, and that's a very simple three line table, and that we could employ even in our Rotary clubs for project management. So I think they're very simple tools that we can use. We just need to document, to keep good documents and keep a track of timelines. And those dashboards that I showed you before were all created in Excel in my slides. The question that we have, the third question, is how often would you recommend that clubs review projects, specifically signature ones done annually, and brainstorming new projects? And my response to that would be that signature projects should be reviewed at least annually. I think after you deliver a project, you should immediately do a postmortem at the end of that project, especially as you get ready to plan. You start planning for the next time around. So it's not when your new president is coming in, you already know who the president-elect is. Let's, at the end of that project, really sit down and do an effective postmortem. One of the reasons, obviously, is if you are, you have a signature project that you have ongoing for many years, you want to keep it fresh, and you want to be able to continue to draw people to come back or to participate. So how do you keep your target audience engaged, and how do you improve it year over year on year? So I would suggest, we review projects certainly at the end of the delivery, but at least once a year. Then there was a project, there was another question, community partnerships require involvement, contribution, ownership of the project. At what stage of the project does this occur? And I think very early in the project, we need to build our community partnerships. I indicated, I think at step 2, that you want to acquire your resources. You want to go out there and you want to find partners for your project. You want to find subject matter experts. You want to find specialists. You want to find volunteers outside outside of the club. So I think at stage 2 of your project planning, you really need to start to build those community partnerships, especially as you are delivering projects where they're the key stakeholders. You want to make sure that that's loaded up front and that you have them on board as you go through the other phases. In terms of the design of the project, having community partnerships and key stakeholders involved in some of the design elements of the actual project, I think is very powerful and leads to powerful buy-in as the project is going along and being implemented. There's another question here, and could you tell us a bit more on how you ensure sustainability? Now that's a loaded question, and I think that's one of the things I meant when we talked about really defining the scope of the project up front, really understanding what are the objectives you're trying to meet, and also in that discourse, how is this project at handover going to be sustained? Who are you handing it over to do the daily management of the project? Can that person or entity run the project? Can that entity sustain the project? What do we have to put in place to ensure the sustainability of a project? We don't want to put a lot of effort and funds into a project, hand it over, and then it goes, it does not have the impact that we intended at the beginning. So one of the key steps that you should do very early is, in terms of identifying the key stakeholders, is to also build that into your project planning very early as possible. How is the project going to be maintained? Who's going to be running it? What do you need to make sure that the project is going to be sustainable going forward? And how do you get those resources in and built into your project for handover and for onward maintenance of the project? So I'm going to stop here. I think those are all the questions that I've seen in the chat. Do we use the term post-mortem or peer review or post-review? I think we can use post-review. Peer review obviously is maybe perhaps getting another Rotary Club to help you look at a project, and that's also fine. Fresh eyes on a project is good, but post-mortem, post-review, I think very similar. But basically what we want to do is at the end of the project, we want to evaluate, what has gone right, what has not gone right, what should we do better next time, how could we make it more impactful, etc. So depending on whatever term you would like to use, it's that review and evaluation that we'd like to do at the end. And keep minutes of the postmortem and follow up on decisions next year. If you have, yes, documentation is really very important, and that's what we fall down a lot on, where we have one person being very instrumental in the project, maybe keeping the notes and, not in a central place. So documenting and, having a way to make sure that those documents are shared widely and, passed on so that we can learn from our lessons from the project before and pass it on as we plan for other projects. So I think we're at time, Rotarian Luana. I think we're really bang on time at 7 o'clock. I don't know if there are any other questions that anybody wants to pose live.
Thank you, PP Katrina. I noticed there's a question in the chat from Tracy Knight Lloyd asking, can you tell us a bit more on how you ensured sustainability? Was that question specific to the project that was presented, Tracy?
Oh, thank you. Actually, PDG Katrina, sorry, she did answer it in the context, but as you raised it, it would be interesting to find out how that applied in the context of the project that was presented. Thanks.
Secretary Grace, can you please answer the question?
Thank you, PAT. Rotary and Tracy, projects, especially long-term projects, they will have two aspects. You may have requirements for capital establishments, and then you have the regular things like your electricity and stuff like that. So we're always looking for funding, because in a lot of cases funding comes for, or the presentation of funding is to support a capital item. But for the continuity of the project, we try to find the business community that will support long term. Let's say you take water, you take electricity, so that they will continue to pay that small amount, but for a long time, forever. And we give them feedback so that they know that their investment is going to good use. Does that answer? Thank you. I'm reading your lips.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Grace and Rotarian Tracy, for your question. We will now go into the housekeeping matters before we do the vote of thanks. I'd like to encourage again all incoming officers and even the ordinary club members to please register for the remaining pre-pet sessions, and also continue to register for the sessions in the Learning Center. We're encouraging you to please register, and especially complete the courses that speaks about Rotary. We're getting a lot of feedback from the survey questionnaires where Rotarians are asking us to tell them more about Rotary. So we are going to encourage you to go to the Learning Center and sign up for courses. An email will be sent out tomorrow with some suggested courses with the ID numbers to help you to find them easily. Our next session is scheduled for Thursday, March 11th. This will be on Navigating Club Central and Rotary International's website. It will be facilitated by Marnie Nixon, who many of you know, and there will be live demos during the session. Registration for Pets and District Conference is also open, and we're encouraging clubs to use the $500 club rate, which will enable all your members to attend. Also, please submit your names for the representatives to sit on the district training committee, and we need to have the names of your club trainers. Please appoint your club trainers and let us have the name of the person, because we are going to commence training for the club trainers as early as May. Please cooperate with us. I'm making this appeal week after week after week, but I'm not getting any responses coming in. So please, AGs, please support us with this request. I will now ask Past President Cheryl to deliver our vote of thanks.
Thank you, Luana. Good evening, all protocols observed. My duty this evening is to give the vote of thanks. And I would really like to say to PAG Katrina that your presentation was very much appreciated. Thank you for sharing your knowledge on project design and implementation with us, as well as giving us the basic steps for a successful Rotary project. After all, basically our plans and our goals are made up of a number of mini projects and sometimes signature projects, which of course would require more planning and implementation and community involvement, etc. But you've basically really set it out for us in a very simple way that I am sure that most of us would have understood quite clearly. I very much appreciate all that you have shared with us this evening. Additionally, I would like to say a thank you, special thanks to Secretary Grace for sharing with us the actual project management methodology to implement your sport, education, culture train concept in Buxton with your basic literacy project. It was very interesting to see all that you've done over such a long, sustained period, and to understand how you continually acquire funding, etc., for all the various parts of this complex project, I would think. Additionally, I would like to say thanks to DGE Sonia and PAG Luana, and the district training team for putting together these programs that are always very interesting and insightful. I must also thank all the persons who provide technical assistance in the background. Last but not least, I thank you for your participation, the audience. You have been very good in fielding questions and, you know, participating in the entire process. So to all, a heartfelt thank you. Have a good evening.